We acknowledge that the land we meet on today are the lands of the Ghana people, and we respect their spiritual relationship with their land.
We also acknowledge the Ghana people as the traditional custodians of the Adelaide region, and we respect that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Ghana people today. Hello and welcome to Mod TV.
Hi, I'm Sam.
And I'm Ashton. Now, we are two of the moderators from Mod. If you haven't been to Mod before, Mod stands for Museum of Discovery, and we are a future-focused museum which is working at the cross-section of art, science and innovation. Now, we're usually based on the corner of Morfett Street and North Terrace, but at the moment we are coming to you live from our homes to yours.
And you might be wondering, what is Mod TV? Mod TV is the latest venture for Mod, with live content streaming directly from our screens to yours. And here at Mod TV Lounge, we will be engaging with the themes of connection, well-being, and disruption, looking deeper into our exhibits, hosting games, and more. And our current online exhibition at Mod is Life Interrupted, where we are exploring well-being and connection in a disrupted world. Today, we want to focus on well-being.
So to help us do that, we are very pleased to welcome Trish Hansen. So Trish is the founding principal of Urban Mind Studio and the creator of Being, a design code for life.
Trish is a prominent thought leader in the fields of creative health and well-being, the creative and cultural life of places, public art, and the vibe of neighbourhoods and cities, as a natural collaborator and complex systems thinker.
So Trish has provoked, pioneered and managed social enterprises, programs and quests in the tertiary, adult and paediatric health, urban arts and cultural sectors.
So please welcome to Mod TV Lounge, Trish. Hi, Trish Hansen. And just as Trish joins us here,
Hi, Trish.
We'd like to remind you all watching at home that you can join in with the chat. Put up a comment or a question, and we'll try and fit it into today's conversation. So, Trish, welcome again. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Your work, we're focusing a bit on Being, a design code for life, a resilience tool for ambiguous times today. It's incredibly relevant to the theme of well-being, and that's what we're discussing today. Can you tell us a bit more about Being, what it is, and how your interests came about?
Sure. Thank you, Sam. Thanks, Ashton. So Being is a resilience tool to help you grab and hold that space between a happening and your response. So life throws challenges at us every day, all day, every day. Some little ones that just annoy us, and others are really big things that we have to really get our head around. And some things take more than a to-do list or more than the right things to say. It actually requires that we determine how we want to be in something and cultivate a disposition. So it came to me in a really moment of crisis, and I know we're in a collective crisis now, but a few years ago I was diagnosed with cancer, and the treatment's been really successful, and I'm out the other end, and I'm quite well.
Good to hear.
Yeah, it's good to be here. But in those moments between being diagnosed and being picked up by my family, I was overwhelmed, and I went straight away into a panic state. I knew a little bit about the neurobiology of the brain, but wasn't really thinking about that at the time. But I was in a panic state, and my mind was in a complete flurry. And then all of a sudden I thought, I was trying to make a list with one side of my brain, and the other side of my brain was trying to think of the right sentence to say, knowing that this was really important to frame it in a constructive way. And I really struggled with that. And so I all of a sudden thought, this is too big. It's the project of my life. I have to work out how I want to be in this. So I sat there in those minutes and I thought, well, I want grace and I want wisdom. And they both sounded very serious. So I thought, I want joy and humour and love and beauty. And I knew I was going to need a lot of courage. And so I sat with those words. And by doing that, I was asking myself, what does grace look like here? What does humour look like, and what does wisdom look like? And it just took my mind in a completely different direction than panic. And so after that, I started playing with words, used them if I was having a painful treatment or something, and turned it into a tool called Being, a design code for life.
Wow. So you mean to say that when you were sitting in that moment with that news, that's when you thought of those words?
Correct. Yeah, it wasn't a tool then, and it wasn't until I tested it, over the coming months. And actually, it was a friend telling me about a pretty rough situation they were going through themselves. Months later, she kept repeating this sentence: "I don't know what to do, blah blah blah. I don't know what to do, blah blah blah." The story went on. I don't know what to do, and the one sentence, "I don't know what to do," just kept rising to the top for me. And I just looked at her and I said, "You don't need to know what to do, girlfriend. You just need a design code. You need to work out how you want to be. Like, what are the words that best describe how you want to be in this situation?" And she told me her words. I wrote them down, and we kept them. And she told me months later that made an incredible difference to her life, a profound difference to her life. And I was shocked not just to hear how vulnerable she was at the time, which I wasn't really able to pick up, but that it had value. And so I felt compelled to do something about it. So I ran it as a Festival of Ideas workshop, and it was sold out, and people were lined up to get in. I did that with two colleagues from Free Range Future, which was great, and we called it Being Human. And then a friend in Sydney caught wind of it, a very radically generous friend from a parent. It's a media company in Sydney, asked what they could do. And I asked if they could, one of the ideas we came up with was turn it into an app. And so what started as a tool and a box of prompt cards is now an app.
Cool. So in that development, there's a lot of stages there from idea to then turning that into cards and then an app. What do you think the most challenging aspect has been?
I think initially it's recognizing that it's something. I think tolerating the ambiguity. Like, I think if there's a metaphor for anything here, it's that we are all in uncertain times. None of us know what's happening. And arguably we never have. We've just had a bit more control over some of the things that are immediately in front of us. But what this allows you to do is to determine how you want to be in a situation, and which allows you to deal with the ambiguity, so that we're not trying to make a to-do list. We're not trying to be someone or do something, but just asking yourself, what are the words that best describe how I want to be in this right now? And that, when I say that, COVID is even too big. Like, how I want to be in this pandemic is too big. Although you could start with that, but it's really how I want to be in this moment when I'm confronted with something, trying to make a decision about something, don't know what to do. It's really moment by moment. So I'd say the challenge was trusting the whole process. And I often find myself, even now, when I'm getting in a flurry about something or overexcited about something, I'll take myself back to my own tool and say, well, how do you want to be in this? What are the words that describe how you want to be in this?
Wow, this is resonating for me very strongly. As a keeper of many, many to-do lists, I feel like this might be a much more useful approach.
It's different.
It's different frame for thinking.
Yeah.
And in thinking about that, what do you think are people engaging with this process? What do they often find most difficult?
I think its simplicity is so easy to overlook. It sounds so ridiculously simple because it is. And I kind of almost kick myself that I hadn't thought of it before. Like, it's so simple. And when you even find yourself in an elevated tone of voice with someone that you're either stressed about something, and so you're grappling with what to even say, any trigger that takes you into how you want to be immediately takes you into a part of your brain that is quite transactional, and it's not emotional. So it allows you to not only grapple with the ambiguity, but to self-regulate your emotion and to interrupt that process between a happening in your response, which you can hold that space with this tool. And what that allows you to do then is to translate that ambiguity into curiosity instead of anguish or fear or despair. Because we know when we feel those things, we have a response. We either switch off and disconnect and disengage, which is a coping mechanism, or we outwardly express that as emotion, and sometimes that can be as anger and sometimes even aggression. So it's really a really powerful tool, and it's easy to overlook in its simplicity.
And Trish, you've touched on this and sort of talked about this, but maybe just to really get to the nitty gritty, what do you think people should be focusing on for better well-being? What do you think it is?
I think there are so many wonderful tools around, but at the end of all of that, you have to determine how you're going to be. And so arguably that's all we've ever got control over, even in our last breath. And that's where my mind was when I was diagnosed. And I don't want to sound gloomy with that, but that's the truth. And so it's even in our last breath, we can determine how we want to be and focus on trying to manifest those things and cultivate that disposition. We don't always have control over how we're perceived or received. We don't always have control over many factors outside of us. We've always got control over how we choose to be. And our success in being those things is another matter, but we can choose how we want to be. My 15-year-old, beautiful 15-year-old neighbour, Luca, said to me, Trish, it's like having a conversation with my future self. And I think that sums it up really beautifully.
Well, that's great, and that, like, as a takeaway, that must feel and sound really good when you hear that. What do you hope people take away from the work you're doing, and what other perhaps stories have you heard from people who have gone through the process?
I would love for this to be ubiquitous. I don't need to be known or remembered for it. I just want it to be everywhere so that we have it in conversations when we're meeting a new partner, when we're having a conversation with a worried parent or grandparent or brother or sister who's being annoying, or going into an exam, that we're always thinking, okay, how do I want to be in this? And that we start to talk about how we want to be in this. And I think I find that concept interesting when we look at how we want to be at a collective level. So as a family, or as a neighbourhood, or as a city, how do we want our city to be? How do we want this to manifest? And I think if we get to a point where we are having those conversations and discussions with leaders that are making decisions, if in their mind is a really strong sense of how we want things to be, as a team, as a workplace, as a city, then that will influence their decision making if they're leaders of the kind that want to connect with those that are impacted most.
That's a really exciting idea. I think that we could get to a point maybe where, say, when we were having those daily news conferences about the pandemic, I would have loved it if our politicians were in a space to be able to discuss these tools with us and say, okay, this is how we want to try and frame this and how we want to talk about it. That's exciting to think about.
Well, I did send a box of the prompt cards to Jacinda Ardern.
Brilliant!
In my bubble of utopia, it's the being tool. That's what's making leadership wonderful. Of course, I can't take any credit for that at all, but it makes me giggle.
And hey, if it leads to a future friendship with her, that's a great first step.
Yeah,
she's pretty cool.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
So, what else are you working on in this space?
Well, I've become obsessed with being, as you may be able to tell, and I'm really interested in what that looks like at a city level. Now, our municipal leaders, like our elected members, are in a really important position. So local government has extraordinary power, And so I'm currently working on a series to support elected members to make wise decisions. And it's really a 6-series workshop bringing leaders from around the world to speak very briefly about what's emerging in practice, and so that elected members can be really well briefed as they go into making decisions, because they're making really important decisions always, but the decisions they're making now and over the next few months and years will impact on generations. And I want to be part of supporting the thinking around that. So that's what I'm doing most days now, is setting that up, and I'm really enjoying it. And so later in the year, I'm hosting a Conscious Cities Festival here in Adelaide, and we are partnering with cities around the world: Tel Aviv, London, Bangalore, Los Angeles, and others, to host different activities that take us into that mindset of a city and what really matters.
Cool. So I'm not sure if you're allowed to tell us yet, but what kinds of activities?
It's still being planned, but the Commissioner for Children and Young People, her team will run something around what young people have told them already. So young people have told them that creativity, confidence and connectedness are really important for a city. And so they'll be running activities to ask young people what that really means to them at a city experience level. So what does being connected mean in terms of public transport? And they're really getting into the nitty-gritty of what some of those policy things mean. I would like to hold lunch, shared lunches with people to talk about things like, should Adelaide have a siesta? You know, what traditions and rituals should we celebrate as a city? What should we grieve as a city? And start to provoke some of those concepts that take us into our thinking, the mood, the mindsets, the meanings of cities, the vibe of places. And really it's more of a festival of questions than anything else. But it'll be low scale this year to start. I really want the conversations to be intimate, so 10 people at a table, say, and then translating that into something to share with our city leaders, those people that are shaping our city, because every one of them that I know of is doing that earnestly, with the very best hopes of making Adelaide the most amazing city to grow up in, and to be in as a young adult, and to then grow older in.
That sounds great, and that's such a good lineup of cities to be participating in as well. Like, that's really cool that Adelaide could be part of that.
Yeah.
And just quickly before we move on, I'd like to put in a vote for yes, we should have a siesta. I went to Spain in high school, and ever since then I've been like, why aren't we doing what the Spanish are doing? This is brilliant.
Yeah. Brilliant.
We've just had fantastic. We just had a comment come through on our thread here, our chat thread. So at Mod, we asked viewers what kind of words they would use to describe how we want our city to be. So
great.
some of the words they used were friendly, inclusive, imaginative, interconnected, porous. Oh, that's a good one.
Nice.
And shared. So we wondered, how do you feel about those words, Trish?
Let's be that.
Done.
My work's done. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, they're good words.
Yeah. It's interesting,
And,
sorry, Sam.
No, that's fine. You go.
It's interesting, isn't it, when we've got those words, like, what does that look like? What does a shared city look like? I would love to take every one of those words and have a conversation about them, because what's embedded within that are our values and what matters to us most. And and there's no wrong answer. There's just different ways of coming at it, and I really think that's a lovely data set that you've just collected. And
you're welcome to use it.
I would really love to just reflect on those words again, and I know our municipal leaders would be interested in hearing those things as well.
Cool. Sam, did you have a question?
Yeah, just to play kind of devil's advocate. And I don't want to bring it down, but what do you think? I love all this. I love being. I love the tool. What do you think is standing in a way, or has stood in a way, or could stand in a way of this being taken on, by individuals or local government or thing? What's perhaps standing in the way at the moment?
I think it is a lack of conversation about it. So I can imagine a future where we have um, meetings and leadership meetings and council meetings really framed in that context of how do we want to be here? What are we aiming for? And that we know it, we all feel it, we understand it. So when we say shared city, we understand. Oh yeah, that means that that when there's a public space, that everyone has access to it. I mean, and arguably, there's a lot of that already embedded in our city. But the person that said that would have meaning for them, and that would have motivated why they selected that word. So I think we need more conversations about it at every possible level, and I think the best way to start that is to get your head around your own head and to think about how you want to be in something. So I'd recommend the next time, and you can download the app, it's free and it's not collecting data. And that's thanks to the radical kindness of a parent in Sydney. And when I say Sydney, it's an Adelaide friend who's moved to Sydney and set up this incredible company and has a whole team of over 100 apparentinos, we call them. So it's using the tool. And the prompt cards you have to buy because there's a cost to printing them. They're available online, but the app is free and the tool is really simple. The habit is probably the most powerful thing. So when during COVID, when you're washing your hands, for instance, you could use every finger to think of a different word of how you want to be in a situation. You can, if you find your flatmate or your parents or siblings are worried about something, you can ask them to go wash their hands and think about how they want to be. The beautiful thing about that is that when you really need it, you've got a tool in your toolkit to pull out and call on when you are faced with something seriously challenging.
Does it take a lot of practice, you think, to change those mental habits?
I think there's a whole range of wellbeing tools that we could do with having in our minds as easy access. So, and we know gratitude is really important. We know mindfulness is really important. This would be among those. There's a theory called event thought reaction, which the Being tool sits right into that. So even though I knew these theories, I never actually could grab that moment between a happening and my response. And it's only through this tool that I've been able to really hold that space. So, of course, any habit is helpful, but the work that we do on our own mind is incredibly important, and we have to just start anywhere. There's no better place to start than right now and moment to moment. And you can practice this for anything. If you're standing in the aisle at a shopping centre and everybody's looking a bit gloomy at the moment because we're barely, we don't even know how to look at each other without feeling strange. Even that is to actually just, go in and say, how do I want to be in this? And there's no right answer. The words are, the relationship you have with the word is the right answer. So when we've made the app, we've literally just put the words there. We started with definitions. We started with pictures. It's all been pulled right out. The design's really simple because it's your relationship with your word in your mind and what you think that looks like.
That sounds really empowering because I feel like often, for me personally, there's an event, there's my reaction, and then there's reflection where I go, I wish I'd been a bit calmer or I'd taken a second to think. So it's great chatting to you because it's making me realise there's probably more space in that moment than I realised.
Yeah, well, there is if you can grab it. And I've been able to grab it before. And so this allows you to, I think the trick is if there is something complicated, going back to that question, it's grabbing the trigger. So when you feel yourself going into a flurry or when you feel yourself changing your happy place in your mind, really, or feeling yourself lose control of your emotions, the earliest you get that trigger to identify when this might be helpful, the better. But at any point, even if you've gone down a pathway and you've overreacted at something and you are reflecting, even at that point, how do you want to be in that? Because guilty wouldn't be a word that you choose, but that's often an emotion that we end up with. So at any moment, you have the control to shift your trajectory and take yourself in another path.
That's great. And it's cool to know, I think, for everyone watching, that you had to learn it as well.
Yeah, every day. Every day. Yeah.
Now, I think the answer to this question is going to be get the app and have a read, but maybe there's some other suggestions for if people are interested in finding out more. Where would you suggest that we look, Trish?
I would suggest going to the Being Code website. It's thebeingcode.net. A parent have set that up especially so that the app and the cards and a bit of the science is there, so you can have a look at what's there. But use it. I guess just keep asking yourself, how do you want to be? And the words are one way to do that. So I think there'd be other ways to do it, but the words are one way to do that, is to take your mind into that space between a happening and your response.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We have loved having you in today to chat.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Trish. Please put your hands together. Go absolutely wild and crazy at home for Trish Hansen. Thank you, Trish.
Thank you. Thank you.
Resounding applause. So we'll be back here in the Mod TV Lounge, coming live to you tomorrow from 4 p.m. And we've got another really exciting guest. We have Noriko Wynn, who is the Futures Research Leader at Oricon, which just sounds really cool, and I can't wait to ask heaps of questions about what that even means. So in the meantime, if you'd like to see more of what's happening here at Mod, you can go to our website, mod.org.au, or our Facebook or our Instagram. Thanks so much, and we'll see you tomorrow.